Hey, what's going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at the SMSL SH-9 and SU-9. Now, before we get into today's review, I just have to give a big shout out to Shenzhen Audio for providing both of these units for review. Shenzhen Audio is an online audio retailer that has provided me many things before in the past in order for me to review, and they were kind enough to send both of these units over. So I will link their store in the description below. And I believe both of these are currently on sale for a Black Friday, Cyber Monday price. So you can maybe pick these up and save yourself a few bucks on both of them. But once again, big thanks to them for providing these for review. So the SMSL SH-9 and SU-9 are mid-grade offerings from SMSL. The SH-9, I guess you could almost argue, is like entry level. It's getting right in that realm of like moving out of entry level into mid level in terms of price. The SU-9 is on like actually solidly into mid level in terms of pricing. But yeah, it is a very nice looking stack, as you can see. And we will get into my thoughts and whether or not they are worth it. So let's just start with the SH-9 straight out, because I think this is going to be a very quick and simple review. For those of you that saw my review of the SP200, that THX amplifier, this is basically that with more features, a remote control for a mere $25 price premium. It is using the flagship THX AAA 888 topologies, and it has the same power as the SP200, so 6 watts at 16, 3 watts at 32, 440 milliwatts at 300, 220 at 600. Same balanced and XLR inputs with no pre-outs. And it essentially sounds the same as the SP200, but it is better built with some features. So talking about the build quality, and this will also apply to the SU-9, both of these units are very nicely built. They both feel really high quality and premium. The knobs both feel very nice screens on both of them, nice solid metal chassis with a nice finish and just very nice curved soft edges. And they both look very, very nice and are both very, very premium. But anyway, the SH-9, let's go over the feature sets real quick compared to the SP200. So your biggest selling point by far is going to be the remote control. Now the remote, you can go up and down the volume. That clicks because it has a stepped attenuator, I believe. You can switch the input, RCA balance. You can switch your gain. And then you can go into your menus. So you have input, balanced and unbalanced. You have gain, high and low. You have volume mode, which I'm not sure what this does. I couldn't figure it out in my testing. Brightness just changes your screen brightness up and down. And then version is just your software version. So all in all, pretty simple. And yeah, it is just basically an SP200 with a remote control and a screen for only $25 more, which is not very much. And to me, it makes the SP200 kind of a hard sell, because this is just nicer built with a remote control, screen, and a few other little added features for just $25 more. And it sounds exactly the same. So pretty much, if you're thinking about buying an SP200, I would just get this, and I would say this is the THX amps to get. Even over the Mass Drop 789 and the mono price 887, the only real advantage I see to those is maybe the 3.5 millimeter output and maybe the RCA pass-through, which if you need those, then by all means go with that. But I would say this is probably my favorite of the sub $500 THX amplifiers. So SH-9, if you do want a very analytical sounding amplifier, and you're willing to live with the somewhat smeared and compressed microdynamics, which is what I said that the SP200 sounds like, because THX amps tend to have a little bit smeared microdynamics in my experience, then this is a very, very solid pick, and I do like it. So SH-9, solid pick for a THX amplifier, and it gets my recommendation. So now let's move into the SU-9, which is where we're going to spend the bulk of this review, because this is much more interesting. So I'm going to try to get through this somewhat quickly, because I really don't want this to be a 30-minute long video. So the SU-9 comes in at $440. It is using the ESS ES9038 DAC chip. And as far as other things worthwhile, it is fully balanced DAC, so XLR and RCA out. It supports PCM up to 768, DSD, I believe, up to 512. All of the Bluetooth formats that you would want, UAT, LDAC, APDAC, aptX HD, etc. As far as inputs, you have USB, optical, coaxial, and Bluetooth, so pretty much all the inputs that you would want, except for possibly AES, but nobody really uses AES outside of ProScene, at least most people do not, or I2S, which is also very, very weird. And also has full MQA decoding, which is something I actually forgot to mention it in the M200 review. That also supports full MQA decoding, so maybe for those of you that use Tidal, if you like MQA, these will natively decode it. So the SU-9 is an ESS-based DAC, and I personally am not generally a fans of ESS-based DACs. I tend to prefer AKM because I do typically hear the famous saber glare, as is known to be called, where a lot of ESS-based DACs sound a little bit bright and kind of harsh, and I've had this problem with a lot of ESS-based stuff, be it dongles or other lower-end DACs, like the Topping D10, I think is a really good example of what saber glare sounds like in a DAC. But the SU-9, I really don't have any issues with it in terms of saber glare. There really wasn't anything bright or thin sounding about it to me. So that's really good that we got that out of the way up front. So let's go over the features real quick, and then I'll give you my little thoughts real quick on how I think it sounds. Okay, so now moving into the features here of the SU-9. So the SU-9 also comes with the SMSL remote, so you do have full remote control. So on the remote, you can change the volume, you can mute, you can switch your inputs, and I think this one just goes right to your Bluetooth. So, and then moving into the menus. So first up, you have input, so you can switch between USB, optical, coaxial, and Bluetooth. PCM filter, you can pick your filter, fast linear, slow linear, fast minimum, slow minimum, apodizing, fast hybrid, whatever, brick wall. So you have a lot of filters. Not going to get into them for sake of time. DSD filters, you have all of these options, which I don't use DSD, so I don't really care. Sound color, now these basically add distortion to simulate things like tubes or crystal, which makes it a little bit brighter. Rich adds a little richness to the sound, so you can play with these if you want. They don't work as well as an actual tube amp or anything like that, but they can be kind of interesting to play with. But I tend to be a little bit more of a purist, at least when it comes to DACs. And if I'm going to EQ something, I'll just do it with either a software EQ or actually get a tube amp, but you can play around with those, which are cool. Then we have pre-mode, which is volume variable or volume fixed. This just basically either enables or disables the volume knob. So if you are always going to be using this with a headphone amplifier, then you can just leave it on fixed because you're never going to need to change your DAC volume. But if you maybe use it with speakers or something like that, then you can leave it on volume variable. DPLL. DPLL basically just controls like USB jitter, something like that. Very niche setting that not many people are going to need, so I wouldn't worry about it. Brightness, once again, screen brightness resets everything to factory, and version is just your software version, so those are your menu settings. Okay, so now in terms of sound for the SU-9, the SU-9 really surprised me for how good it sounds. As I mentioned, it does lack a lot of the saber glare that I so often have issues with in ESS-based DACs. But the SU-9 has surprisingly good staging and imaging, much wider than the M200 was, and it actually stages surprisingly well. The other thing that really struck me about it was the detail. It is a very detailed DAC, and that seems to sometimes be a quality that a lot of people associate with some ESS-based DACs, which I usually think tends to be more because of the brightness. But Other people could say it's because they don't have the AKM velvet, which a lot of people say smooths over some areas of the sound, which is, I guess, a fair take in some aspects, but generalizing DAC chips like this is not generally the best idea because it doesn't particularly matter that much. It's more, the filters and everything else around the DAC that makes more difference than the chip itself. But yeah, so the SU-9 is really, really detailed for its price point with really good staging, surprisingly dynamic, very, very good at resolving little micro details. And for its price, it is a solid, solid contender. It is one of the better DACs I have heard in the price range, which very, very surprising because I have historically not been much of a fan of SMSL DACs, but the SU-9 really, really stands out as being a very, very solid DAC offering. And for its price point, given its feature set and its build quality, I think it should be a top contender in its price range. And compared to Shit's Modius, which I also have on hand here, I definitely think this is a more detailed DAC. And I actually do prefer this over the Modius. I prefer the Modius over the M200 personally, but I think I prefer the SU-9 to the Modius. So really good job, S.M.S.L on the SU-9. It is a very, very nice DAC with a lot of feature sets. Remote, Bluetooth, filters, sound modes, balanced output, very, very nice looking, very solidly built. So SU-9 absolutely gets my recommendation, and it should be a very, very high on your list in the sub $500 DAC range. So as a whole stack, it is a very solid stack. I do like the DAC more than I like the amp, but amp and DAC both good for what, 600, 700 some odd dollars. Not terrible. There are amps for this price that I like a little bit better. I still like Modius and Asgard 3 a slightly bit more than the SH-9, but the SH-9 is a good amplifier. So as a stack, it is a very, very solid pick that you should consider. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the review. Once again, thanks to Shenzhen Audio for providing these for review. Once again, I will link them in the description below if you want to check either of them out. But anyway, I will also link my Twitter, my contact email, and all other relevant information in the description below. But I hope you enjoyed the review. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.